Hi, I'm Manny Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington Realtors Legal Hotline lawyer. Today, in part 2 of this sub-video series, we are going to talk about, guess which paragraph? Paragraph 2 of our Financing Addendum. And the title of the paragraph 2 is Loan Information. Now, before we talk about the specifics of the loan information, I want to talk a little theory with you. Let's talk about what the financing contingency is really all about. Here's what the financing contingency says. The financing contingency says, from buyer to seller, seller, I love your house, really want to own it, only problem is I have no idea if I can afford it. So, recognizing that you could probably sell your house to another buyer, I'm asking you, please take your house off the market and give me the opportunity to buy your house. And if you will do that, I'm going to make promises to you in return. And the very first promise I'm going to make to you is the promise set forth in paragraph 2 of Form 22A. And that promise goes like this. Seller, I promise that I am going to use good faith to go get this loan. And I'm inviting you, seller, to confirm that I did that. I'm inviting you to stay 100% on top of my loan efforts so that you never have to wonder whether or not I'm making good faith, forward progress in closing this loan in a way that's timely to close the purchase of the transaction. Form 22A, paragraph 2, loan information says, from buyer to seller, seller, I invite you on day 10 following mutual acceptance, and 10 is the boilerplate default language, but it's really the right amount of time to use. It's enough time to give buyer opportunity to make their loan and get their disclosure documents back from the lender so that buyer is confirmed with the lender that they're going to be going forward with. The buyer invites seller on day 10 following mutual acceptance to send a Form 22A to the buyer. And that's a request for loan information. Form 22AL says to buyer, buyer, you have 3 days following receipt of this 22AL to respond to me using a Form 22AP. This is one of the very few instances in the statewide forms where the form that buyer has to use is mandated by the forms themselves. Form 22A says that buyer must respond on Form 22AP. Why? Because Form 22AP provides the guidelines for all of the information that buyer is required to give to seller. Form 22AP requires that the buyer provide, number 1, the identification of the lender with whom buyer made loan application. Number 2, a checkmark box representation of all of the documents that buyer has already provided to the lender. Number 3, a warranty that buyer has provided to buyer's lender all of the documents that lender has asked for buyer to provide so far. In other words, everything the lender has asked of me, I have already delivered to the lender. There's nothing outstanding. It's not like the lender's been asking me for my tax returns and I've been saying, yeah, I'll get to it when I get to it. Everything the lender's asked me for, I've provided. That's the third element of the 22AP. And then the last part of the 22AP is really the biggie. The last portion of the 22AP is buyer's agreement or buyer's instruction to buyer's lender to provide information to both listing broker and seller upon listing broker's or seller's request. And there is no limit on the number of times that listing broker and seller can ask lender for information. If listing broker wants to call buyer's lender every hour on the hour, they could do that. Be a really bad idea, but they could do that. It would be an equally bad idea for listing brokers to sit on their hands and never make contact with buyer's lender, to never follow up with what's the status of buyer's loan. Listing brokers, I want you to understand, I want this really to penetrate what we've said in this video. The financing contingency is buyer's request of seller, please take your property off the market while I go and try and find a loan. And that is a huge favor for you, seller, to give me, buyer, a complete stranger to you. So in return, here is the promise I make to you. When you ask for confirmation of my good faith efforts, I will give you that confirmation. Listing brokers, buyer is inviting seller to get this information from buyer. You are not being overly aggressive or burdensome or anything else when you, on behalf of seller, submit a timely 22AL to the buyer's broker. Instead, you are complying with the standard of care required of a lawyer, the standard of care to which you are held, when you both select and fill in the blanks on the pre-printed standardized purchase and sale agreement forms. If a lawyer were representing seller, would the lawyer recommend to seller that they go get that information that buyer offered up through their terms in the financing contingency? If you reach a conclusion, yes, a lawyer would do that, which I hope you do reach that conclusion, then you're right. And that is the standard of care to which you will be held as you advise seller through the use of the Form 22A. We're ending this video discussing paragraph 2 with that statement. When our next video will pick up with the discussion of paragraph 3, and it's going to feed right off the end of this video. So hang on for that discussion. If you have any other questions, though, between now and next Friday, send an email to me, legalhotline@warealtor.org. Thank you for being a Washington Realtors member.